Flatting is a term that a lot of people are not familiar with, but it's vital when creating comics, and it's probably something that should be adopted when you're creating illustrations too. I'm going to discuss what a flatter is, why you should flat, how to flat, and some of the things that I've learned on the way to try and make it as simple as possible. Before I start though, please consider flatting that subscribe button. Thanks. A flatter is someone who takes line work and assigns a colour to each of the elements within that line work. They're often hired by comic artists because admittedly it's not the most exciting thing to be doing when it comes to art, and it also means that the comic artist can then move on to separate pages or letters or whatever it is that they're trying to do while the comic is being flatted. Flattened. Flatted. Flatted. Sometimes the flatter is given a colour palette by the comic artist, and sometimes the colours don't matter at all. So now you know what a flatter is, why should you do it? Well, the main reason is to set up the colorist so that they can render the art more quickly and more easily. By assigning flat colors to the artwork, it means that the colorist can then select specific areas of their artwork and isolate it by selecting that flat color. And that way they only focus on that one area and they don't have to worry about everything else. It just makes the whole process of rendering a lot less stressful and a lot easier, which is why you should do it. Not only will you find it a lot easier to render your artwork, but it also means that you can edit any parts of your artwork that you need to edit, and by flatting it before, it means that you can make those selections a lot easier. The other reason why flatting is important has more to do with the printing process. I'm far from an expert in printing, and quite frankly, printers freak me out. I don't understand them. But most, if not all, printers use CMYK colors, and they stand for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key. Key is black, but it's the key color. I don't know. Now, the printers work from plates, and they separate the color into these 4 plates into the CYMK things, and then the wizards that live in the printers, they cast a spell on the plates, and then the plates come together and then they make the colors go onto the page, and then you've got a print. Not an expert, but what I do know is that while printing, sometimes these plates can shift slightly, particularly if they're printing at high volume, and if they shift slightly, then that means the colors are shifting slightly. You're only talking like tiny amounts, but if there are gaps in your colors, then those gaps could show through the line work. Now, it's not necessarily something that's super common, and I can't recall it ever happening to me, but if it does happen, then you've just wasted a load of money printing stuff that can't really be used. Now, the reason that flatting specifically solves this issue is because to do flats properly, you want to ensure that there's no white space in between the colors. And a good flatter will make sure there's no white space unless it's intentionally white. So if you're looking to get work as a flatter, you need to make sure that you don't leave space. So now down to how to flat. Now, many different people have many different ways of doing this. It depends on your personal preferences, obviously, and it depends on the software that you like to use. Now, for me, I prefer to draw on Clip Studio Paint, but I prefer to flat on Photoshop. And that's simply because I prefer the lasso tool from Photoshop. I just think it's a bit more versatile than the Clip Studio Paint one. And what I personally do is I will take the line work and put it on a multiply layer. Now what this does is it ignores all of the whites, so only the black line work will show through. And then I get a layer underneath that, which I'll call flats, and then I'll start making selections. Now the key to making selections with the lasso tool is that if you use the freehand lasso tool and you hold Alt, it will switch to the polygonal lasso tool, which is more of a point-to-point lasso tool. And if you release Alt, you'll go straight back to the freehand tool. That's why I like the Photoshop lasso tool, because it's quite intuitive and you can have quite a lot of control. At least I feel that I have a lot of control. Now there is a hierarchy when it comes to flatting, which you don't have to do, it just makes it a whole hell of a lot easier. Which is if you think from big to small. So say for example you're flatting a character, the first thing you want to do is take the entire character, fill that in as one flat color, then you break that character down into the different elements. So for example the hair, the skin, the clothing, the accessories, whatever. And you repeat that process for everything. I'll show a quick time lapse of me flatting something that I did whenever. I haven't actually decided what I'm going to flat yet, but I'm sure it'll be amazing. Now, the final thing to note when you're flatting is that although the colors don't have to represent what the final colors are going to be, they do have to be different from each other. This is especially important when you've got one thing that's stood in front of another thing or is very, very close to something else, because if you've got character number 1 is stood next to a vehicle or an object or a separate character, it doesn't matter, and they're both orange or they're really, really similar oranges, and you only want to select this one, when you use the magic wand tool to select the flat color, you're going to select them both, and you don't necessarily want to do that. In fact, you almost never want to do that. So make sure that even if they are both orange, that they're different shades of orange. So then the colorist or you are going to be able to select one or the other. And that's another thing that is quite easy to overlook. And once you've done this a few times, you will get faster. Like if it's the first time you're doing it, then don't worry about speed, just worry about accuracy, because speed will come with time. But you will learn bad habits if you ignore accuracy. To check whether you've got gaps or not, you can just turn off the line layer on and off and you'll be able to see from that. Now, how you use the flats is up to you, but for the most part, you would duplicate the flat layer and the one on top would become the layer that you render, and then the one on the bottom will remain your flats, and that's the one that you can create selections from, which is the point of flats. Also, make sure you lock the flat layer so you don't accidentally color on it, because yeah, I've made that mistake a lot. It's annoying. And as with everything to do with art, the best way to learn it is to just do it and then do it again and again and again. It will start to make sense to you the more you do it, and you'll start to develop things that make it quicker and easier for your particular process. So do it and then do it some more. It can be quite satisfying because you can kind of turn your brain off once you've done it for a little while and you're comfortable with the tools and shit. It's good. Anyway, I've been Brinkley, have fun drawing, and I'll see you in the next video.